You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
All right, welcome to episode 7 of the Blue Note podcast, one stop shop. Messed that one up. For all things St. Louis Blues, Monday, May 30th, the day of recording, a special Memorial Day episode. It's episode 7, so it is the...
This was a tough one. This is a real tough one. So many good number 7s here in Blues history. So you know what? We're just going to dedicate it here to them all. Red Berenson, Gary Unger, Joe Mullen. Cannot forget guys like Keith Tkachuk and, of course, Patrick Maroon. So this here is definitely for those guys. Ethan, like you said, it is a special Memorial Day Monday that we are recording. So most importantly, this podcast is dedicated to all of those who have fought, served, and died for this country. So happy Memorial Day here again to you all, and a special thank you here to you all listening and who have currently served or are serving here in the armed forces.
No doubt about it. We owe a lot to them, but we want to thank the listeners as well. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything. You give us a rating of your choosing, preferably a good one, but you never know. I mean, some people might not like this, but whatever. You can get involved with the conversation with us as well on Twitter at TBNPod. We took some questions on Twitter that we will be answering at the end of the show today. So we'll get into those later, but the season is officially over. And I think it's safe to say that it probably ended in the worst possible way, just with the way that they went out. And they just didn't play well. Like it's simple. Like they didn't play well. Colorado did. And you know Colorado was due to get out of this round. And them getting their goals from JT Compher and Darren Helm is kind of an example of that. Like when you don't get anything from your top guys, you still win a road game to end the series. It's pretty impressive. But I'll throw it over to you here. I mean, the season just ended in a really, really bad way.
Yeah. I made the note here before the game started, or before the series started here, rather, that it was guys like JT Compher and Valeri Nichushkin and Arturi Lehkonen that Colorado could easily throw out there with needing a goal, needing to tie up the game, take a lead. And you don't like the feeling of, that you called it, but we called it. I mean, JT Compher came through here in a big way. Just to kind of go back here to game 6, they were down 3-2 here in the series. They were outshot 13-7 in the first period in their do or die game here in St. Louis. It was great. Falk made it 1-0 here with 1 minute left to play in the period. Huge amount of momentum here going their way into the second period. But Compher tied the game in 5:19 here into the second with his first goal here of the playoffs. 4 minutes later, though, Kyrou helped the Blues take the 2-1 lead here, rather, with his 7th of the postseason. He's looking real good here that game. Then they headed into the third period. Blues were being outshot here 26-14. Still wasn't looking great. Husso was standing on his head, but making all kinds of saves to be able to help keep his team in it. Midway through the third, though, Compher scored here again. His 2nd of the game, 2nd of the postseason on the power play after Parayko took a delay of game penalty. And as the club thought that they were going to be heading here into overtime, I think all the fans thought they were heading into overtime. This is going to be another game. Okay, just kill out the last couple seconds. And Darren Helm had some other thoughts as he scored his first of the postseason. 5 seconds left to go in the game. Sends the Avs to the Western Conference Finals. Send Blues fans just into a spiral. Every single fan's jaw on the ground. I know mine was. I could not believe what I just saw. I mean, it was brutal. Ethan, thoughts on the game?
Yeah, brutal is definitely a good word to use with this. I think one takeaway from me would be the Blues really turtled, obviously, and that's something you can't do against the Avalanche. And it really seemed like they were just trying to get to overtime. Like you dump the puck in with 20 seconds left instead of trying to make a play. That's kind of a signal of, okay, let's get to overtime. And Colton Parayko, who's kind of, a player that's beaten up by the fan base, he was really, really bad in this game. Like one of his worst games as a Blue, probably in a big spot. He just was really bad. And the Blues did not try to drive the play at all. They let Colorado take it to them, which was kind of the theme of most of the games in this series, with the exception of, I would say, game 2 some of game 3 and game 5 a little bit, at least in the third period of game 5, but that's when desperation hits. It doesn't hit as hard when you're not losing. Like the Blues were never losing in this game until the end.
Yeah.
And I think that they struggled to play with their season on the line if they didn't have it. Like if they were losing 2-1, I think they play a completely different game. And that's unfortunate because they didn't play the way they should have. I think a lot of that was because they had the lead a lot of the time, despite being outplayed. And I just think the better team won. I think it's simple. Husso was good. The second Comfer one was pretty bad. That's probably a save you got to make. But I'm not going to blame anything on Husso. I think he did enough to win, and the team just didn't play well.
Yeah, I absolutely think that Husso did enough here in this game. You know, I think it was his teammates, honestly, that failed him here in this, offensively here especially. You know, you're outshot 39-20 in a do-or-die game on home ice. Plain and simple, it's unacceptable. It's how do you think, how do you feel that, you know, when you're the goaltender who's having to make all of these sprawling saves here, I mean, against McKinnon, Landeskog, Comfort, I mean, like all of these guys, you're doing everything possible to help keep your team in it. And then the other guys here on the other end, I mean, like the goaltender can only do so much here at this point. So I think Husso did enough. It was just plain and simple. His team in front of him failed him.
Yeah, and I think we're going to echo kind of the same stuff as we get to the player of note for Game 6.
Yeah, it's Billy Husso here for me. Again, 36 of 39 in a game that could have gotten out of hand fast, real fast. They outshot the Blues here, double every single game or every single period. You know, I think it was 13-7 almost every single period, at least for the first two. And then from there, when you cannot get any sort of offense generated, anything, you know, the Blues were extremely lucky to have that 2-1 lead. When Kyrou here made it 2-1, I looked over at my father-in-law who was watching the game with, and I said, okay, they're being outshot real bad, but we're up. So this can only end up going one of two ways. Either Colorado is going to break through this game, or we're just going to hold on and have put little to no offense here, any sort of shots here on Darcy Kemper. And unfortunately, it just went the other way. Small little crack. So my player of note here for game 6 here was absolutely Billy Husso.
Yep, I'm going to agree with that. But I think Jordan Kyrou deserves a shout out. He had a really, really good game. He could have had 3 or 4 goals. I think probably one of the bigger turning points of the game was Kyrou in front of the net. Kemper slides off. Manson comes in and saves that puck.
Oh, man.
And that would have made it 3-1, I believe.
Yep.
So that was probably the thing that kind of ended it for the Blues, because with a 3-1 lead, you feel much more comfortable. But, Kyrou had a really, really good game. It's hard to really evaluate a lot of other guys' games. I think we know Parayko was not good. Some no-shows as well in certain spots. But I think this game kind of represented the season well, with just like inconsistency and Parayko being inconsistent and Falk being good and Kyrou being what he was for most of the regular season, and Husso being good. But it ended badly. And I think this team deserves credit for taking this series to 6, because this was probably not a series that should have gone 6.
Could have been swept.
Yeah.
Could have been swept easily.
Still way better than last season against them, but just not. I mean, the Avalanche are just better. Like it's pretty simple at that point. And, you know, I don't know how most Blues fans feel about this, but do we watch the Oilers Avs series? Probably.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you have, for my money, 2 of the 5 best players in the league, 3 of the 5 best players, if you want to throw Draisaitl in there as well. So in Makar, I mean, you have 4 at least top 8 players in the league right now, with Makar, McKinnon, McDavid, and Draisaitl. So that's going to be a hell of a series. I think it's going to be very interesting, real quick before we get into some other Blues stuff, to see if Mike Smith can hold it together against this Avs team, because Mike Smith, not so good at this point. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think honestly, looking at it here on paper, the NHL and their fan bases could not have asked for a better Western Conference Finals, especially in the first year that they are taking this to ESPN and the whole rebranding structure. Having a series of McKinnon, Landeskog, Kel McCarr going up against Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and you know what? I'll even throw in Duncan Keith in there because, boy, that's going to be a hell of a series. Seeing these two teams just, I mean, they're going to go blow for blow here at this point. And I would not be surprised if you see some games 9-7. You know, it could be just out there in these scores. And I think fans and people who do not watch hockey, sit them down in front of one of these screens because this is going to be buckle up kind of hockey.
Now, what do you think a better Eastern Conference final is for the league? Tampa, Carolina, or Tampa, New York?
I personally think Tampa, Carolina. I think that New York is doing a really, really good job, but I really do believe that they're being held together by Igor Shesterkin. You know, it's nothing against the young guys that are in New York, but they are, I think, playing a little bit ahead of their schedule. Most of their young core is 21, 22 years old, something in around there.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that says that youth can't win. Absolutely nothing. I mean, if these guys want to be able to play, but man, they're just ahead of schedule. And I think that Carolina has a deeper squad that can go up against and push Tampa Bay to a potential game 7. Whereas you would need New York and Shesterkin to play almost like Ville Husso did here in game 6. I mean, and completely just play on his head, which he has done all season long, and just steal the series here for New York. So my money would be on Carolina and Tampa Bay.
I agree with a lot of that. I think one thing that would draw the Rangers would be the atmosphere in New York at MSG. Yeah. And then Shesterkin versus Vasilevsky would be very intriguing. That's where you kind of worry about Carolina. Like, Antti Ranta's solid, but man, Vasilevsky's a different level.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big part of this. And I also think that if you look at just the ability of Carolina at home is going to make that an interesting series, because I don't think Tampa is going to be able to beat a Carolina in 5. I think that one goes at least 6, but that'll be interesting. Game 7 tonight. So we'll see what happens there. I would guess that Carolina wins that. It's a home game for them. They literally don't lose at home. They also don't win on the road. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see the rest of the playoffs as well. But let's go to a different playoffs, which is the AHL playoffs, where the Springfield Thunderbirds, the affiliate of the St. Louis Blues, are playing pretty well as they continue to dominate, I think would be a good term to use.
Absolutely. They're heading to the Eastern Conference Finals. They broke out their brooms. They swept the Charlotte Checkers here 5-1. Joel Hofer, goaltender here, he stopped 34 of 35. He's looking real good in this postseason. Forwards Dakota Joshua and Nikita Alexandrov scored a goal and recorded an assist here each. Klim Kostin with an assist and 3 shots. Springfield also here went 1 for 4 on the power play and killed all 3 power plays here of the Checkers. They're going to be playing up against the Laval Rocket of the AHL minor league affiliate here of the Montreal Canadiens. It's going to be a tough test. It's going to be a real tough test here for them. Their goaltender, Caden Primo, is 6-1 here during the postseason, a 1.93 goal against average and a 936 save percentage. So, boy, they're going to have a hard time here cracking him. And then left winger Danik Martel, he leads the team with 6 goals, 8 points in 8 games here for them. So I think if one thing that's going to really help out the Thunderbirds is they have a lot of balanced scoring here right now going into this final round here in the Eastern Conference Finals. Sam Annis leads the team here with 4 goals, 13 points over 6 games. Former Laval Rocket forward Matthew Pekka, he actually has 2 goals, 9 points in this postseason. Mackenzie McEachran and Alexandrov here each with 6 points. James Neal and Klim Kostin here each with 5 points. So it's going to be a fun Eastern Conference Finals here with these two teams. You almost have to be able to keep saying, you know what, go Thunderbirds. You know, they are rolling. They are hot here right now. But again, so are the Rocket here at this point. Ethan, what do you think?
I think that the Thunderbirds are going to win this series because I don't really know much about what Laval's got going on over there, but I think the Thunderbirds seem to have a lot of depth, and I'm going to go ahead and trust Joel Hofer over Primo. Now, this if something happens with Hofer, you bring Lindgren back, a little revenge game. I think he played for the Laval Rocket at some point, so
yeah,
that would be interesting. But hey, I like the depth. I think this is going to be a big series for the last two guys you named, James Neal, Clem Costin. They're going to show up. We'll see. I think also a revenge series for Pekka, like you said, playing there before. But I think this is going to be a series that is won by the Thunderbirds. And I'm not going to say dominant fashion, but I don't think we're going to be too worried. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. They're looking here real good at this point in time. And if you get the chance to watch any of their games, they're fun. You know, it's different than watching the NHL games, especially, you know, the video quality at times. They do a really good job here with AHL TV. If you don't get the chance to go to watch it live, just go online, catch it. I think they do about a 10-minute here, maybe less than 10-minute condensed game at that point. Catch it. It's fun to be able to watch these guys. And you really get the chance to see what some of these young guys, Nikita Alexandrov, Clem Costin, you know, these guys here are doing down in the minor leagues, kind of seeing how they're developing here right now. I want to be able to touch on here as well a couple of the other guys, because it's not just Costin and company here that are going to the finals, as Zachary Bolduc and the Quebec Remparts. They are up 2-1 here right now in the semifinals of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, the QMJHL. On Sunday, the Remparts actually took a 2-1 lead here in their series, thanks to a power play goal from Bolduc during the second period. His goal actually was going to be the game-winning goal. It was his 8th of the playoffs this postseason, with 8 goals, 12 points in 10 games. If you get the chance to hear later today, Game 4 is going to be streaming. Get the chance to be able to stream that. Jake Neighbours and the Edmonton Oil Kings have advanced also to the WHL. That's the Western Hockey League here up in Canada. They're heading to the finals. They beat the Winnipeg Ice 7-1 on Friday. Neighbours here, you may or may not know, he actually had an upper body injury that kept him out for a couple weeks. He had about 2 to 3 games before they headed into the postseason. So just trying to be able to recover and try to be able to get his legs back out underneath of him. He's looking real good with 2 goals here during the game, 3 goals, 12 points in 13 games here this postseason. So lots to be able to keep here in mind, and we're going to be able to keep our eyes here on what's going on here in the minor leagues, help you keep in touch here with those prospects. So good stuff here from these guys.
Yeah, I think the future's bright with some of these guys, especially Bolduc and Neighbours, the last 2 first-round picks, and we've seen, you know, the impact of some of the younger players on this team this season. And I think we've kind of seen the ability of Doug Armstrong to draft, like Toropchenko in the 4th round, I believe, is like, you know, I think the thing with Doug Armstrong is I trust him a lot more with like 2nd, 3rd, 4th round over 1st round, but that's just kind of a lot of GMs, because the 1st round is just so, you never know. Like there's some really bad 1st round picks, or some really good ones, and every draft varies. So we'll see. But I like a lot of what we're seeing from Bolduc and Neighbours, no doubt about it. Those weren't guys that were like locked or expected to be those picks in that round, and they weren't looked at as steals whenever they were picked. So just 2 solid players that I think will fit into the roster at some point in the near future. Let's do an early look at the offseason. Just a simple, I'll throw it over to you first here. What do the Blues need to do to have a successful offseason?
Honestly, they, I think, need to address the entire depth chart. Every single position needs to be reviewed. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, normally saying something like that makes you think that this team had a horrible season. I think right now you almost have too many players who are ready to go at this point in time. So when you are a cap-strapped team here right now, the Blues need to evaluate who is getting playing time and who that they are choosing. Guys like Ivan Barbashev here played really, really well during the regular season, but he did not show up in the postseason. You've only got 1 year left right now underneath the contract of guys like Tarasenko and O'Reilly and Barbashev, Kyrou, and Thomas. These guys are all going to be taking up here your top 6 lines here at this point. Braden Shen, Jordan Kyrou here again. These guys are all top 6, top 9 lines. But when you've got guys like Jake Neighbours, more than likely he's going to be pushing for a spot. Nikita Alexandrov, Jordan Walker, there's plenty of guys that can play in those bottom 6 lines and even be able to fit into that top 9. What do you do? Because you have too many players here at this point that can easily fit on this roster. And if guys aren't going to be showing up, then boy, that's a move you wish you made and that you wish that you kept around. The defense, it needs to be addressed. Absolutely needs to be addressed here at this point. You've got a logjam here on the left-hand side with Perunovic, Leddy, if you resign him, Torrey Krug, and Marco Scandella. You can only play 3 of them. 4 of them are going to be ready to go here on almost any single night. So you need to be able to address that line. You don't really have a great top line pairing person. You have a bunch of specialists, but you don't really have a whole hell of a lot of guys who can just play every single situation. So the Blues need to be able to address that. And then, of course, goaltending. Goaltending, you've got Binnington, who did show up in the playoffs, and people quickly turned on Ville Husso. Very, very quickly turned on Ville Husso, who absolutely saved your season. Ville Husso is up here for a new contract, and honestly, I don't see him coming back to St. Louis with the amount of money that he can get on the open market. So then you need to be able to address your backup goaltender. So it is an absolute puzzle for Doug Armstrong and company here in the front office to figure out what this depth chart is going to look like, and so that they can be able to compete and beat all of these teams here in the Western Conference and hopefully be able to make it back to the Stanley Cup playoffs. So to have a successful offseason, I think that it just simply needs to be the front office reevaluating their entire depth chart and just making sure that they can trust all of these puzzle pieces moving forward.
I mean, I agree with that. I think one big thing that I would look at, and I'm going to go ahead and make this claim, and I'm going to stick to it the entirety of the offseason. I think Ivan Barbashev gets traded. That's where I'm at on this. I think his value is still high enough, and I think he can be very valuable to a team. I wouldn't be surprised if he's used in a trade for a defenseman. So one thing they have to do is Scandella has to be traded. Like, there's no way he can be on this roster next year. You cannot go into next season with Krug, Scandella, Perunovic on the left side. It's not good enough. Like, Krug is good. We've seen what Perunovic can do. Scandella cannot be on this team next year. He just can't be. And offloading his contract to a team like Arizona or a bad team like that, maybe the move you have to make, even though you'd have to give up a pretty good pick to do it. That's how bad Scandella's been. He's just not good. And he can't be playing next to Parayko. You can't have Parayko, who's not going to be traded either. People are saying he should be traded. He's not going to be traded. Let's be honest. He's entering a big contract, and he can't have somebody like Scandella playing next to him because it's not good. So I think the solution there is to re-sign Leddy and put him next to Parayko, or trade for somebody like Sanheim from Philadelphia, who I think has 1 year left on his contract at 3.6 or something. Ivan Provorov, a younger defenseman, very, very good, solid potential. Or Jacob Chikrin, who we've heard about a lot from Arizona, who has like 3 or 4 years left on his contract. I believe it's like 4.6 mil per year. So it's not an outrageous, it's not even that much more than Scandella. So
no,
that would make sense, addressing that left-handed defenseman to put next to Parayko, because I think you could almost pencil in Krug with Falk and Perunovic with Bortuzzo at this point, I think. So figuring out that guy next to Parayko is going to be a big thing.
And the tough thing here for Marco Scandella is that he has a modified no trade clause. So just for people here listening, he can submit, he will be submitting a 7-team no trade list. So part of his contract, he gets to determine 7 teams that he does not want to go to. So just because the Blues could offload him potentially to a team with a lot of cap space like Arizona does not mean that they will have the ability to if Scandella blocks that, which I believe, this is pure speculation here, Scandella would absolutely have Arizona on his list of do not dare trade me to Arizona. More than likely a team like Buffalo here as well. They're not going to trade him here to there. So the Blues may need to even get creative with even doing something like a 3-team trade in order to be able to get what they want. It would not shock me here if that's something that they would need to be able to do. So yeah, Marco Scandella, Ivan Barbashev here getting moved, both big possibilities. Let's see, Scandella, he's got next year and 23-24 at $3.275 million.
It's a terrible contract.
He's maybe playing at a market value that is half of that. Half.
He's playing at veteran minimum value at this point. He's not good. Just terrible. And that's kind of what worries me with Leddy. I know Leddy's a better player or a different player, but the Blues re-signed Scandella because of a post-trade deadline stretch. I know Leddy was good, but he's also 31. I'm fine with re-signing him as long as it doesn't get too ridiculous, but I'm okay with not re-signing him if they figure out how to address the left side, because you just can't have Scandella there with Parayko. It's not going to work. It's never going to work. Perunovic next to Parayko wouldn't work either, so I think him next to Bortuzzo is perfectly fine.
You also can't forget, we almost forgot Nico Mikkola and Calle Rosen here as well. I don't think Rosen's going to have a huge opportunity here next season. He might be a seventh defenseman. So, we've got 6 guys here, rather, contending for a left-handed defenseman side. So,
yeah, I don't know about Mikkola. That's going to be interesting. Like, he showed flashes of being good, but I don't think he's really the answer.
I'm not. No, and I'm not saying he's the answer here at this point, because I think his limit would maybe be a top 4. He at this point is he's 26 years old. I don't see him getting a whole heck of a lot better, but he is definitely a better defensive option than half of these guys. So it's going to be interesting to see what he's going to do. Mikkola is a restricted free agent going into this offseason, and so the likelihood that he's moved out or just his rights are shipped out, I don't think is going to be obvious, I guess you could say. I don't think Mikkola's chances here of being moved out are good. And so the Blues could go into next season here with him as well.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. All right, let's do the Twitter questions that we got from people here. First one is at Hig1289. So it's HIGG 1289. Multiple questions asked. So we're going to give rapid fire answers, I suppose. Number 1, do you think Tarasenko is getting traded?
No, not at all. He completely revitalized his scoring ability. He looked good here this season. He looked really good this postseason. I don't think so. Between the chemistry between him and Buchnevich, you've got a huge 1-2 punch, and then of course here with Robert Thomas here as well. I don't see him getting traded.
He gets traded if he wants to get traded, I think, is probably what happens. If he really, really, really still wants to go, then the Blues might consider it. But I don't see it. What do they do about Husso, and how does Hofer play into that?
Husso, like I mentioned here earlier, I don't think the Blues have the cap space. It would need to be a situation where Husso says, I absolutely want to remain in St. Louis for something like that to get done. Hofer, he's looked really good this postseason. During the regular season here in the AHL, he's had a mixed bag here at this point. He's still really young. I don't think that he needs to get moved out here or moved up here just as of yet. He is only 21 years old. Give him some more time here in the AHL. I think he may have another full season, maybe even 2, before he's looked at to be brought up. He would need to be able to be eligible to be brought up. He needs to be a little more convincing to be brought up here, in my opinion. Of course, he's eligible to be brought up. He just needs to be dominant here in the AHL for me to say he absolutely needs to get brought up. So
I agree. Huso gone. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets more money elsewhere, which is probably going to be the case. I'm not sure how Hofer would play into that. I agree with what you said, but I also think that Hofer's like third option next year just because he needs one more big year in the AHL, probably, I would say. He's still young,
Yeah.
so that's going to be a
Yeah.
big thing here. The last question here, who is your favorite Canadian fantasy or NHL player?
Oh, it's got to be Steven Stamkos here for me. 481 goals, 972 points in 922 games. He's a two-time Rocket Richard winner, two-time potentially three cup winner here for us. So, I mean, Steven Stamkos, I mean, even with that huge leg injury that he had several years ago, boy, he has just been a man on fire. So, current fantasy and NHL player here for me has got to be Stamkos.
I'm just going to go with the easy answer. That's Connor McDavid. I mean,
So you're copping out here with this one.
Well, I didn't really think about this that much, to be honest. That's not a shot at our fans, but I thought I would be able to come up with a good answer on the spot, and I guess I didn't. But
I almost went Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah, Halifax, Nova Scotia, him or Sidney Crosby, both being from there. That's you pick a duo, I'd probably pick them. But another one, obviously, if you want to look at our guys, Ryan O'Reilly, would be a good pick. Yeah, let's flip this around real quick. Who's your favorite American player?
Of all time or current?
Right now, currently.
Oh boy, I have to go with Matthew Tkachuk. I love the way that he plays. I love his style, his energy. I mean, he is gritty, but boy, I mean, there's something about him. Matthew Tkachuk.
So I'm going to go Austin Matthews.
Fair.
Probably the best right now. Probably between him and Patrick Kane for who the best is, if we're being honest.
Off ice aside.
different story, right? But I think at the end of the day, the top two American players of all time is going to be Matthews and Kane. I think probably in different ways. I think Matthews the best goal scorer, Kane the best playmaker. Obviously, it's too bad that Patrick Kane had to play for the Chicago Blackhawks. What can you do? So yeah, there we go with that. Next one is from a very weird username. At Duke Stang 314. Questionable name, certainly. What is worse, Country Roads or the Keenan era? And I think this is so disrespectful to Country Roads. Like I don't really see the point of Country Roads like you do as well. But I think, it's all in good fun. It's a good time for everybody. And the Keenan era was just a complete embarrassment. They probably would have won at least one cup if Keenan wasn't involved in that, I would think, with the way that, the whole Gretzky thing went down. So that was annoying. And I think Keenan is the obvious answer. And I think it's disrespectful to Country Roads to even bring it up in the same sentence with that guy.
Yeah. Now, he did also follow up with the power play dance.
Yeah. So I don't love the power play dance, but.
Yeah. So I think it's unanimous Mike Keenan era here. Absolutely. I think for a lot of fans, especially if you know the history here, he had that feud with Brett Hall as well as Wayne Gretzky. I mean, they were saying that Blues potentially could have had the chance to keep Wayne Gretzky for a little longer, like if it wasn't for Keenan here at that point. He kept signing expensive free agents. There's constant just empty seats. I mean, there was no, absolutely not. I mean, he ruined a great opportunity here for a Stanley Cup. So yeah, I absolutely think Mike Keenan.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. That'll do it for us for episode number 7. We'll be back some point soon in the next week or two. Episode 8. Got something cooking for that. We'll figure that out at some point. So thank you for listening to the podcast, the Blue Note podcast brought to you by the Believe Network. You can follow our Twitter at TBN Pod. You can follow me on Twitter at Ethan Carter SW. You can follow Mike on Twitter at
Danger Powers 19.
And we'll see you next time for episode 8. Blue season is over, but lots to do this offseason as they try to just keep the cup window open. I think that's the most important thing. So everybody enjoy their Memorial Day, the holiday, the whole thing. And we'll see you next time for episode 8 of the Blue Note podcast.